Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with, as always, my special guest, my co-host, John Barker from the 70th District. And John always brings a special guest in, and today he's brought another special guest. This is Chris Croft from the 8th District out of Overland Park. Chris, you're a retired colonel, and thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being here. Looking forward to hear about your escapades in the legislature, because this is the first term for you.
Yes.
And for John, he's been in multiple times, but there's a learning curve, and I'm going to be real anxious to visit with you about it. John, what's going on in the legislature this week?
Well, this is Friday. We had the day off, and in fact, we had yesterday off. We got out Wednesday. We worked Monday and Tuesday on general orders. On Monday, I think we processed 36 bills. We debated on the floor. We started out 8:30 in the morning. We had a calendar, and we ended up about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Long day.
So it was a long day. I think I got back to my room about midnight. But we passed a number of bills out, some interesting debates on a number of good issues. Then we went back in early, 10 o'clock. We calendared at 9, went in at 10 on Tuesday, and on that day we had 15 bills that we debated during the day. And on Tuesday, the Senate was actually in debating bills, which always is a surprise to me. But I think they had 24 bills above the line, so hopefully they passed a few of those out. Most of the bills, as you know, Doug, they passed 117 to 7. It's really a bipartisan. Of course, when you get to the core issues, we have some bills that are more divisive, and the votes are closer. But I think we talked about the week before we'd done Medicaid expansion. This time we took up appropriations bill. We took up an educational bill that has to do with the policies. I have one example here. I showed you earlier. This is about a 50-page document. That is one bill explainer. One bill on Senate Bill 25, which is the appropriations bill. And so, those take a little time to go through. I know Chris, and I'm glad he's with us today. I mean, he brings a vast amount of experience to the legislature, and he's really been one of the leaders of the freshman class. In the future, I hope he likes it well enough that he wants to come back, because I think he will one day possibly be a Speaker of the House.
Awesome.
And that's very impressive. But we a couple of bills of interest that I thought I would bring up one was 2244. I voted against the bill, although it passed. I think it was 94 to 32 or something to that effect. I have the numbers here somewhere. But it had to do with CBD oil, which we voted on last year with no THC. Right. Now it will be allowed to have THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, as you remember from the days of when you're law enforcement or as a judge. And every law enforcement agency in the state of Kansas came in and testified against this bill. The Kansas Medical Society, which has all the doctors and the medical professionals, was against this bill. They were just a few folks, some out-of-state legislators, and some families that have children that they think that this will help them were for this bill. The problem is law enforcement cannot tell whether it's 0.5% or more, and I think it's an avenue for black marketing, where they can go to Colorado and bring in more potent THC.
And the drug dogs, of course, they can't tell the difference of a percentage, so they're going to hit on it, and then law enforcement's in that situation. Well, is it legal, is it not? How do you go about proving the percentage in it?
Well, marijuana dogs will no longer probably be used, because a court can't base a probable cause on something like that.
Right.
Because it could be less than or 0.5 or less, or more. As you say, a dog can't tell the difference. They hit on the scent, and so if this would become law, there'll be no more marijuana sniffing dogs. Just can't do it.
Right.
And
what's your best guess, John, when that gets to the Senate?
I've talked to the Judiciary Chairman, which is one of our senators in Dickinson County, Rick Welburn, and he is very apprehensive about even hearing it. You know, I think this is kind of a nose under the tent by certain groups that, you know, we'll get under here, and then we'll get medical marijuana, and then we'll get recreational marijuana. And there's a lot of money coming from folks out in Colorado and stuff who have, you know, million-dollar businesses that would like to come in and expand into Kansas or other states. But the thing we have to remember, it's still against federal law.
Yeah. Even though many states are adopting it, and we got to cut away, John, take a quick break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker, representative from the 70th District, and our special guest, Chris Croft from the 8th District out of Overland Park area. And Chris, we were just talking a little bit off camera. We're going to talk a little bit about your experience, because I know that this is your first go in it. I want to finish up with John, because one of the bills John's been working on that's been getting quite a bit of press, see his picture in the paper, and that has a lot of interest about the gaming bill.
Right, gaming bill. I had a meeting a week or so ago with all the casinos and the interested parties, to include like convenience stores and the leagues. Major League Baseball had their representative there, NFL, basketball, NCAA, along with the convenience stores. I probably mentioned that before, but trying to get them all together on the same sheet of music. I had a bill that I had drafted along with my counterpart, Senator Estes, who's chairman of Fed and State in the Senate, and we sit in the old Supreme Court room, and I just kind of went through page by page of the bill that we proposed, knowing that it would have to be changed. But I just wanted them to understand that, you know, I'm ready to negotiate, but I would prefer that they negotiate among themselves and come to me with a proposed product that we could put it into bill form and have hearings on. You know, it's about $38 million to the state if we got the 50% of the revenue from it, and so they want to give us 6.75, the casinos do, and I'm at 50%. So we've got a little, you know, a little range to negotiate.
And a little gap.
I thought it was a little outrageous, because 6.7% is the take. That's the profit margin, because there's going to be $1 to $1.5 billion bet, and that kind of shocked me.
That's a lot.
But that's the projections. So, you know, we're in that phase. I hope by veto session we'll have a product that we can do, but if we don't, that's okay.
I remember, John, that you were saying before on one of the earlier shows that on the gaming bill that this came about because of federal legislation, that why should Nevada have the only gaming opportunity? And then the Supreme Court opened that up, and the opportunity existed for all the states.
It happened last summer. The New Jersey had filed suit saying that, you know, Nevada cannot be the only state. Supreme Court agreed, and so since then, of course, New Jersey has it. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, they're working on a bill in Missouri and in Iowa, and a couple Alabama and the southern states have also got bills in their legislature. You know, it's being done now. It's just being done illegally.
Yeah, no tax money from it.
No tax money, and because, you know, it's also the illegal portion is run by organized crime. So we want to bring it into the light so we can do some enforcement.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Chris, let me shift over to you for a minute.
All right.
You retired colonel.
Yep.
How many years of service?
30 years of service in the Army.
In the Army.
Yep.
And you retired, your last duty station was it
Fort
Leavenworth?
Yes.
All
I
right.
retired 1 February last year, so
and then,
just over a year.
And then somewhere, and what was your MOS?
Basic MOS was transportation, 88,
okay. Right.
and then we switched into logistics at 90, and then the last 10 years or so, you're kind of branching material, just going into leadership, senior leadership jobs.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your years of service.
Well, thank you.
So you get done with 30 years in the military, and your wife is Connie, and you have 4 kids.
I have 2 kids and 5 grandkids.
And 5 grandkids.
Yes.
And so now Connie probably says, you know, we've traveled everywhere we've done. Now we're going to settle down a little bit, and all of a sudden you get the idea to say, you know, I think I want to be part of the legislature. How did that come about?
Well, yeah, that was an interesting story. So I had been approached at several breakfast events that we'd gone to and said I'd ever thought about, because I'd always talked about wanting to continue to serve. And so they said, well, have you ever thought about serving as a public servant? And I'm like, I've never thought about it. I'm in the Army. I'm good right now. And then they just kept talking to me, and I got introduced to a few folks, and going through the process, I realized that, you know, it actually is a good place to continue what I had done in the Army and continue to serve the state and the nation, and get involved in something different and have a different journey. Yeah. And so it didn't take much once I realized that, you know, there was an opportunity, and I jumped on it.
And so how old were you when you went into the military?
Well, I was 23. It took me a little while to get through college, but I signed up at 19 years old to get an ROTC scholarship.
All right.
And then, and so I've been doing that almost my entire adult life.
So it's just like with basic training for a little while. When you get in there, you know, it's left, right, left, get yourself in step, and doing all those other things, and the
Right.
dress,
Yeah.
and doing all that. And now all of a sudden you move into the legislature and you say, okay, I've got experience, but I don't have any in this field.
Right.
What's the learning curve?
Oh, it's a very large learning curve, but I'll tell you, a lot of the experiences that you come in with are very beneficial to what you see there, and in fact, having those experiences and being a part of committees, you're able to give out what you know, because other people don't have that experience.
Right.
And so, by the same token, you have somebody on the committee that's been in banking. I've not been in banking, so I talk to them about banking. You know, I've never been on the judge side of things, so as I talk to the judge, you know, he tells me these things, and I start to learn. And so everybody is part of the team, and everybody brings that thing. But for me, from a learning curve is, you know, you started out with, you know, being a second lieutenant. You know, that's where you're learning all the basics, and they only give you so much to do, and you're a foot soldier, and off you march, and you gradually gain more responsibility. And so it's done that again, and it's, you know, made a conscious effort to come in and be a follower and be part of the process. And as leadership opportunities come up, then I'm going to take those opportunities to do what I'm trained to do.
What committees are you on?
So I'm on veteran and military. I'm on taxation. That's a good one. Yeah, I enjoy that one. Obviously, it's right in my wheelhouse, so it makes it nice. And then you have taxation, which is definitely not my wheelhouse, but I'm learning an awful lot about tax policy, and so hopefully we can do some stuff there. And then I'm on commerce, which is one that I really, really wanted to be on, because I believe that, you know, we really need to bring more commerce to the state, and we need to find ways to make it more beneficial for our companies to come here.
Concentrating on perhaps economic development?
Absolutely, economic development.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to cut away and take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back after these few messages. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with, as always, my special guest, John Barker, and he's also brought Chris Croft out from the 8th District. And Chris, again, thank you so much for being here. We've been talking about a lot of things because John's on committees, and I know when we were talking over the break, you were telling me what an advantage it is to be able to come in and then hook up with somebody who's been there before and can kind of show you the ropes. And in this case, it's been Judge Barker.
Yes, Judge has been my mentor through this process, and it wasn't something that was dictated. It was just something, a natural fit. Both of us had a military experience. As we were meeting together, come to find out we were both stationed in the same place in Vicenza, Italy, just a few years apart, not many actually. I was, you know, at the very beginning of my career, and so I got to hear some of the history, and that was neat. But what's really nice is he's taken me in and teaching me things, you know, strategy and stuff like that, just kind of basic, getting me to understand the procedures and where I'm going. We don't talk about how to vote, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. We just talk about where to research, how to get, you know, understand the ideas of where things are coming from. And that's been so valuable to me as I've been going through. And then I help share that then with my peers. And we all do that from our mentors. And it's a very interesting structure, because the same structure we had in the military.
Yeah, and it'll be the same, Chris, as time moves on and you're in the legislature another term. There'll be somebody coming up, and that person will seek you out because they have common interest, prior military or something that you've been through. And that's, you know, it's the old helping hand.
Right.
Speaking of helping hand, I saw you have something on your wrist. What's that say?
I do. Well, this is Zero Reasons Why. It's a group out of Overland Park, Blue Valley District, school district. And what this is these are some students that really got concerned about suicide of their peers, and they've created an organization where they help each other out as peers. They're not asking for legislation, they're not asking for anything, they just want us to know. I was so impressed with that organization, and there's so many more like that out there. That's actually the greatest part of what I'm enjoying as being a legislator right now, is just getting people that I would have never gotten to meet.
Is that student-based?
It is student-based.
Well, you know, when we get done, we'll put it up on the screen at the end of the show if you have the contact information so people can take a look at it.
Oh, that'd be great.
And see what's going on. And by the way, the contact information for John and for Chris will both be up on the screen at different times, and you'll see it. You can make contact with them. They'll very accommodating, and they'll answer their questions. And John, let me come back to you for a second, because one of the things that I always find, and you know, to me, being a rather simple guy, why you come in and here's a lot of figures of information, and here's how much debt gets accumulated. And you brought a piece of paper in with you now that's a chart of all 105 counties.
Yeah, I do have a chart, and a simple guy, I'm thinking about that. I've heard so many arguments from you when I was judge, and none of them
well,
were
I can
simple.
act like I'm not simple,
Okay,
but I am
all right,
simple.
Doug. But you're one of the brightest guys I know. But you know, I do have this chart. I got it from Jake LaTurner, the county state treasurer, based upon county clerk's reports, and I always like to tell the folks about what's happening in Dickinson County. Just for those folks that have an interest, Dickinson County is $80 million in debt.
80 million.
80 million.
That's a lot of money.
That it is, and about half of that, about 46 million of that is from school debt, from bond issues that were passed. Then, of course, the cities have about 11 million in debt, and that would be all the cities within the incorporated cities in the county. But then again, I look at Johnson County, where my good friend comes from, and they're 273,169,000 plus change.
It's almost 5.3 billion.
Yeah. So totally on the state, our debt from cities, counties, school districts, and such are 25,623,210,838.47.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And you know, and I understand government needs money to run. I just one of those legislators who does not like debt. You know, we have the unfunded actuarial in Capers, which we've talked about before. And at some point in time, and we don't want to raise taxes. We're one of the highest tax states around us. So, you know, sometimes we just have to look and say, well, we need to cut a little bit, or spend a little less, save a little bit. But, you know, that's always been my perspective in the legislature is, you know, there are things that are good programs, but sometimes you just can't afford them.
Yeah.
You live on a budget.
Yeah, I would think that would come up a lot, John, that there would be things that somebody would present and have put a lot of work into it, and you say this can help these people in this, and then you start looking at the money, and you know, it's just kind of like in your own personal life when you say, well, I'd like to have a new car, I'd like to get this, but I'm not buying an $80,000. I'll wait a few years, I'll get by and just keep going.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's what working families do, is they, you know, they have a budget and they say, okay, you know, we need a new couch for the living room, but we can do that next year if we pay off this other loan that we have. Unfortunate state. We're not the federal government. We don't get to print money. The federal government can print money. They can go, you know, they can go overboard. And I think with $23 trillion, that shows how far we can go overboard.
Yeah. I don't know how that all ends, and probably not well would be my guess. Chris, in regards to, you come in here and now you begin to look at the finance and the demands upon taxpayers and the requests that people come to you, I suppose, from your home district and other locations come in and say, need you to support this and here's why. How do you go about evaluating you know, what you should do? How do you go about deciding this is good, this isn't good?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, as everybody comes out and they start coming up with the ideas and present them to you, there are many lobby groups that sit outside. And so that's kind of one of the first steps that you hear from people, or, you know, here's my bill, or you need to support this. But then what I've done with them, I said, okay, tell me why, and then tell me who's opposed to it and why are they opposed to it. And then I'll go to the person that's opposed to that idea and I'll ask them the same questions. And then I go at night, I read the rest of it, and then I'll go on the internet and start doing some other searches, going around, and then we have a group of us that are freshmen that we get together every morning. We start talking about these ideas and start sharing them, and each of us do a little bit of research ourselves, almost being back in school where we form study groups.
Well, that's awesome.
So,
do you have we just have a little bit left here for time, but do you have a system set up that you know, if I'm talking to somebody out at Garden City, that area versus Overland Park, is there quite a difference in the philosophy of it?
There is, and we have to be understanding of that. Just because I'm over in Johnson County doesn't mean I can't just make it all about Johnson County. I mean, if we're here to do things for the state as well as for my district, we have to take all that into consideration. And we've seen that in some of the policies. Some people are like, hey, we shouldn't be doing that for us. Like, well, it's not always just about us. It's about the whole state. How do we do that? And that becomes a real delicate balance as a legislator, is how do I do both of those and try, and you can't make everybody happy, and I recognize, and that's really hard for me.
I'm sure that's true. We got to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Legislative Updates. And John, as always, I really appreciate the fact you take time from working all week with the legislature, as you do most of the time, and I know those days go on right on up till 11 o'clock or later.
Right.
And then you don't get a whole lot of sleep, and you're up for breakfast, and it starts in again, and there's a lot of demands. Thank you for serving.
You're quite welcome. I enjoy serving the people of Dickinson County.
And you've done a great job, and thank you for doing it. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, sir.
And thank you for your years of service in the military, and thank you for taking time to come out, because the legislature wasn't in session today, so you could have been back home at Overland Park, and instead you came to Chapman, and then you're going to turn around and drive back. Hope you've enjoyed Legislative Update.